you know when you have 20 seconds left.
All right. Well, I'm Jack Dresser. I'm the National Vice Chair of the Veterans for Peace Working Group on Palestine and the Middle East. And 2 months ago, I requested that the Commission investigate possible Israeli training of Eugene police. Since police administrators and officers across the country have been widely trained for the last decade in methods of political repression perfected by Israel for nearly a half-century, maintaining its colonial regime. This regime, designated a belligerent military occupation by the United Nations, is maintained by violent suppression of popular dissent among the occupied population who are dispossessed, denied constitutional rights, and killed and imprisoned for political resistance. Such methods are entirely inappropriate for transfer to the United States or any democracy with constitutionally protected civil rights. These methods were used against the Occupy movement from its very beginning in New York's Zuccotti Park, have proliferated ever since under the banner of anti-terrorism, and clearly violate our First Amendment rights to freedom of speech and freedom of assembly. Civilian police commissions have a duty to set constitutional limits on police behavior, to protect the rights of the citizens they represent. Providing police, quote, the tools they need, fails to satisfy this standard. Trainings in repression of political expression by citizen assemblies have been funded and provided for American law enforcement at all levels, both in the U.S. and Israel, by the Law Enforcement Exchange Program of the Jewish Institute for National Security Affairs, and by the Anti-Defamation League, which reported having trained over 85,000 U.S. police as of 2013. Both these organizations are prominent arms of the Israel lobby, which represent the self-interest of Israel, not of Americans. So, Israel's been repeatedly cited for human rights violations by the UN, with international sanctions vetoed 43 times by the U.S., each time voting in isolation from all other Security Council members. We must not incorporate police training from an international outlaw state. This is currently under active discussion by attorneys from the National Police Accountability Project. I ask whether this investigation I requested has been done by this commission in the last 2 months. If not, why not? And if so, why the findings have not been made public? The public has a right to know, and this commission is vested with responsibility to provide us such information. I have a copy of this for everybody, plus a number of web links to verify and document all this information.
Thank you, Mr. Dresser. Do we have any other public comments? I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. Okay. Our next item on the agenda will be commissioner comments and responses. If anyone cares to do so, I will start off with my comments tonight. I have had, and I'm very unpleasant to deal with an issue in this commission that I've put a lot of thought into, probably more than I should have, but I want to be fair about this to everyone involved. But I feel it's sort of my responsibility as a person who lives in this community and as a person who serves on the commission to speak out against comments that are, deemed to be offensive to people. And as such, I'm speaking not as a chair, but as Bob Walker, just a member of the commission, in saying that I'd like to condemn the comments, both verbal at the meeting in in October, and again in writing last month's meeting by Commissioner Tyndall. Those comments were totally inappropriate, offensive, and I think tarnished the image of the police commission in the public's eye. We are supposed to be unbiased and uncritical of people based on their religion, race, age, sex, and I don't believe that was the case in those remarks. So that is the one thing I wanted to get off my chest today, and I've done it. So feel like I spoke my piece. It's about all. Everybody should be entitled to their opinion, and I'm giving my thank you. We can go around the table for other responses if you'd like. Yes, go ahead.
I guess I would just say, counterterrorism and civil disturbance / handling protests are something that are unique to each society that they occur in based on the culture and legal settings of that society. I'm not saying Eugene police in the past have never made mistakes, but I have been favorably impressed more recently with the understanding of, or greater understanding of the role that legitimate protest plays and the ways that the police are obligated to minimize the impact on people's day-to-day business while allowing people to express themselves lawfully. I think I appreciate the policy we did pass, and I think one of the things we can do in the future is talk about the hiring policies. I think we do depend a great deal on the good judgment of our managers, and to the degree to which we can get those written into policies so that if they ever are reconsidered, they can be reconsidered in a public way. I think that's a good thing, and I think that's on the agenda coming up, so I hope we'll do that.
Steve.
There are apologies for missing last month. I was in Washington on a board planning session. I'm not sure. I know Jim was at excuse me, the CRB meeting and probably brought forth some comments or his observations. One question that arose and I wanted to just throw out there was we reviewed a case regarding a pit maneuver that didn't quite work out as intended or as instructed, I guess. And one of the things that we observed was there was no ICV in the lieutenant's vehicles. And it's our understanding that there is no ICVs in any lieutenant's vehicles. And so that was the question was, is there plans to do that? I mean, especially if they're going to be involved in something. And then a follow-up question was whether or not when the body cams get issued, will lieutenants be issued body cams as well? So that's all I have.
Anyone else? Okay.
Okay, I guess,
Oh, go ahead.
I can go. Yeah, this week, on December 4th, last Friday, I don't know how many of you noticed this particular article in the Register Guard titled, "More Police Officers Charged in Deaths in 2015." And the article says, of the 1,000 fatal police shootings in the past decade, only 47 went to trial. The conviction rate was a paltry 23%. In 2015, 15 cases went to court, 3 times the yearly average. 10 of these incidents had video, without which a trial would not have occurred. The article attributes the low prosecution rate to the police controlling the narrative. Video evidence removes that power. But why is the conviction rate so low? I believe there are 2 reasons. First, the system protects its own. A trial occurs to create the illusion of justice, while wink, wink, nod, nod, the prosecutor takes a dive for the team. Second, many folks want the police to harass blacks, Latinos, immigrants, poor people, the homeless, and other undesirables. A few dead black kids simply is not a reason to stop this behavior. Recently, this commission approved a policy that allows EPD to confiscate cell phones used to record police activity. The winning rhetoric was the quote, "The phone might contain evidence of a serious crime," and quote, "If this stops one child from being kidnapped, raped, and murdered, it's worth it." Looking past this nonsense, what was the real reason? Whose phones will be confiscated? Answer, the homeless, as EPD evicts them from their camps. As I have heard, quote, "We need to give the police the tools to do the job." So, what is the job? Answer, to punish bad guys. This begs 2 questions. First, who are the bad guys? And second, should the police be in the punishment business? Confiscating cell phones, tents, blankets, automobiles, and so forth from the homeless folks is extrajudicial punishment. Furthermore, using the police to chase the homeless away has proven unproductive. They are still here. As Chief Kearns said at our October meeting, the police cannot solve the homeless problem. I believe he wants our help to find and promote workable solutions. Punishment as a strategy has failed. Thank you.
Anybody else? Chief, Claire?
Yeah, so I wasn't present at last month's meeting when the comments that Commissioner Walker were referring to were made. And as a former staff member for the ACLU of Oregon, I definitely support free speech rights. But I also believe that we are all responsible for the effects our speech has on others. And I would hope that every commissioner at this table would appreciate the impacts of comments that reflect dated stereotypes and bias while we sit on this or any other city commission where we are charged with representing the larger community. So I look forward to our discussion about the working agreement in that context.
Thank you.
In response to, is it Dressler? Comments, I have no idea what the quality or purpose of the training is that the Israeli Defense Force or police provide. I'm not aware of EPD receiving any training from those organizations, and I'm pretty sure I would know about it if we had.
Check out those links. There's another article just came out a couple days ago on it. I've got 5 or 6 links there that go into great detail. So I'm very gratified if that's not the case, but
I'd be shocked if we did. And then the only association with the Jewish Defense Fund, and I don't know if there's an association, is that we have traveled to the Simon Wiesenthal Center in Los Angeles in order to receive Train the Trainer training on perspectives on profiling. That's where our department first learned about that. We gained the curriculum.
well, that's part of it. That can be part of it, yeah.
But that's
They're
been.
one of the
I'm going to have to ask you not to respond, Mr. Dresser. This time is for the commissioners, and
Okay.
Anyway,
you had your time. Thank you.
that's been training that's pretty respected for teaching officers to better understand their implicit biases and make decisions around that, and has nothing to do with suppressing. There is no component to that whatsoever that would have anything to do with suppressing anybody's freedom of speech or other rights like that. And then we don't have in-car video or body-worn video for lieutenants, and I don't know if that's in the plans, but we'll, since you raised it, I'll find out.
It is, Chief. They're already ordered and installation's already started.
There you go. Just ask.
Good answer.
And then, you know, I've as the police chief, I've attended public meetings where language was used that was contributes to our workplace that it's not a respectful workplace. I have a responsibility to make sure our employees that I maintain a healthy, safe workplace, and so I am mindful, and I've brought to the attention of folks who create a hostile workplace for our employees, and where appropriate, I confront that. And so that, in the context of this setting, our employees are required, certain employees are required to be here, but they won't be if that kind of conduct were to become a practice here. And I would take over the responsibilities for Carter, and our other employees would be required to be here.
Anything else before we move on? Okay, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, reviewing the minutes. Carter? Anything you need to do?
No.
All right. Everybody's had a copy in their packet. I hope you've had time to look at it. If you have, I'd like a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
So moved. I'll second.
By Jim, seconded by Joe. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous. Thank you very much.
Can I ask the process question? Is Mr. Lorky still a member of the commission?
He is,
Officially,
yeah.
he gets to
Yeah.
sit out his term.
He's not here. No. The way it works is we have asked Mayor to appoint the next person in line on the list that was provided previously when both Scott and Marshall were appointed. So that person, I think, is coming up
Monday night.
Monday
Oh,
night.
okay. Great.
For
I
approval.
mean, I miss Jesse, but I just was
Yes,
curious.
he-
The code says that Jesse can keep his seat until a replacement is found.
Gotcha.
So
So that's
upon,
why he's still listed. Mhm.
Right.
Thanks.
And, yeah, thanks for bringing that up, because he didn't hear it. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the police working agreement. And We had provided with that last week. I'm hoping there was enough time for you to digest that properly. And since it's a part of your packet, this time I'm going to make a motion that we accept the working agreement provided to you and open discussion.
I'll second.
Second by Claire. And discussion. I'll start at Q.
I have a question. I'm assuming this was a model taken from
Oh, thank
another,
you.
maybe,
Yeah, I want to introduce
Where we
that to
pulled
you.
this
Thank
from.
you very much. It was provided to me, the Human Rights Commission had used this model and actually adopted it for their working agreement. And it's worked very well for them. As you can imagine, there are a lot of issues that are very emotional in the Human Rights Commission. So they seem to find this to work very well for them. And so I didn't do a lot of work. I did add language as the last item, which paraphrases the city code on conduct in the workplace. And I thought that was appropriate. Since the commissions aren't bound by those, the city manager made those rules and regulations. So the commission needs to add that in as one of them.
so I think it's an excellent document at this point. I mean, I obviously might change my mind if other folks have suggestions, but right now I think it's very well framed.
Okay. Scott?
I have a question how this fits in with the bylaws. Does this become part of that, or is it a separate document?
No, it does not become part of the bylaws. It's a rules for conduct, a separate document, and does not carry the enforcement effect of the bylaws, no.
Okay.
Anyone else? Bill?
I would just like to say, I mean, I really like this working agreement, and I think, and we all have to remember, and when we look at this and read through this, is that, as a public body, we don't want to ever come across being disrespectful or making people uncomfortable to come and talk at our meetings. Part of this is really to bring the public here to talk to us, and if they feel intimidated by comments that commissioners make and to not want to come and voice their opinion because they feel like that they're being discriminated against or not respected. So that's why I think it's important that we look at this and make sure that we abide by this, not only for ourselves in our communications, but as other people looking into that and more want them to come to the public and speak.
So, I guess,
Joe?
yeah, clearly this is directed at me, and it's directed at my recounting my experiences in 1972 with some extreme violence on the part of the police. If I were to tell everything that I remember from that event, it would take probably an hour or more. So I have condensed it, and unfortunately, apparently some of my remarks have been taken, in my opinion, out of context, and that's fine. I do have a second write-up, which I will pass around, and you guys can do what you want with it. I won't read the whole thing, but essentially, most of the first page recounts details of that particular experience. And the second part of it is that this occurred, whether you like it or not. And I think that what we have is the issue that people do not want to hear this story. And I think that if we are working on a policy that ultimately ramps up to clubbing people, that it is my concern that we acknowledge the fact that the police have periodically not done, things that we would like them to do. I mean, we do have shootings that are going to trial now. We have the officer, John Pike, with the pepper spray. We have lots and lots of video of officers misbehaving on the internet, and I think that that needs to be recognized. I think that there is an opinion in this group that's held fairly, and is held fairly widely throughout the society, that police do no wrong. And I think that we have to, it is our job to ensure that the kinds of things that have happened in the past never happen again, which is specifically why I told that story. And there is evidence to indicate that, in fact, it is true and correct. If the story itself is offensive, I'm sorry, but that's what the police did. So I find this, and then finish up on this, I find that item number 3, most of these represent a case of hypervigilance. You have to be thinking about other people's feelings. Number 8, I think, constitutes essentially political correctness. And number 7 is that it sort of states it's like a product disparagement law, in the sense that if you disagree with it, you're not allowed to talk about it, which I think is a violation of First Amendment rights. So that's my comment on this particular document. Thank you for listening.
Steve, and then I have Marshall, and then Claire.
Well, from my perspective, I'm a little disappointed that we even need something like this, because I feel like that's just a general expectation of participation on any committee, or any board for that matter. We shouldn't, have to be admonished or reminded that appropriate decorum and respect for difference of opinions and whatever. So I'm, having said that, I mean, I'll support it if we feel like it's needed, but I just, I would think that it really goes without saying. It should go without saying.
Thank you. Marshall, and then Claire.
I'll support it. I think the other thing we should be cognizant of is not going down rabbit holes that aren't directly related to what we do. Groups like this have a limited bandwidth to process a fairly large body of things, and the more time we spend on issues that are derivative of rather than central, the less time we have to deal with critical issues. Thank you.
Claire.
So I'm afraid I have to respond to Joe's comments. I think it's incredibly disingenuous of you to claim that this is a way to stop you from telling this story about what you experienced way back when. It was the language in which you chose to describe the people involved in that story, and then responded to the criticism from some folks in this room about the words you used, and then responded to that by bringing forward additional strong opinions you hold about religion that didn't seem at all relevant to the work of this body. And God forbid that we could consider the feelings of people that we interact with at a public meeting. To claim that as some burden, I really don't understand. So I don't think this document is directed at anyone in particular. You're going to serve your term, you're going to move on, there'll be someone else in your seat. But I think the actions that happened at the last meeting have shown that there is some need, in spite of the fact that I agree with Steve that it's discouraging that we have to have this working agreement before us. But there's a need to hold each other accountable to how we behave at this table. And I think this is a positive way to do that. It is not shutting anyone down. It is asking us to be mindful of the impact we have on others when we speak.
Thank you, Claire. I feel I should respond to that because I threw the document up. I want to assure everyone here this was not made as a response to Joe's remarks, but rather Joe brought to light something that we did not know, and that is that we didn't have any rules that require people to use civil behavior in a meeting. And as Steve said, shouldn't have to have that. We have been operating pretty civilly, I thought, in most of our meetings, but this incident did bring that to light, and so it was no longer a matter of a question. It had to be done. It had to be brought before you as a board and commission to set up rules to provide for safe conduct for everyone. So that's why it's here tonight. Do we have any more discussion? Okay, then I'll call No question. All those in favor of the working agreement, raise your hand. All opposed? Okay, motion passes. So we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is, right, now, we're going to have standards of duty and conduct policy review next, but I'm going to give Nate Reynolds just a moment on.
Good evening, everybody. As you well know, Sergeant Lowen has been with y'all for about the last 2.5 years and is rotating back to patrol at the end of the month, having served his sentence, as we like to say. But he's excited to get back to him and start doing police work. He's done an excellent job working up in our office. I know he's been intimate with you guys on and off on a lot of topics. He also, one of his major taskings when he started up with us was to get us accredited, which he successfully did in much less time than we anticipated, so he was very successful in that achievement. I understand that you met Sergeant Kyle Williams, who's going to be replacing him last month. He'll be starting to take the reins with y'all this next month and learning the ropes from Matt. And along those same veins, I've done my 3 months, it's gone by like 3 months, 3 years, 3 years up in the chief's office, and I'm moving back to patrol also in January. And so Lieutenant Carolyn Mason is going to be taking over for me, so you'll be seeing her at the meetings on and off and helping out with anything he does. So I appreciate all the interactions and the work together and your time and listening to me drone on about things at times. So I appreciate it. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And after at our break time, we have a cookie to share. I want to just use the chair privilege a moment to thank both of you, but most especially Matt, who has walked us through a number of questions that we've had about policy and procedure in a delicate and very successful way in helping us understand the nuances and why things are needed in the policies. It's very important for us to understand what we're voting on before we do. So policy person, the staff here is a very important person to our commission. And you've done an excellent job. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I was like a teenage sergeant when I came up here. You know, I kind of knew it all. And
Nice.
We were nice enough not to tell you.
yeah, you were nice enough not to tell me. But as 2.5 years unfolded and I became more comfortable with the work, you know, the expectations and what you really needed out of me, I had an opportunity to, in an assignment that I wasn't really excited to have to go do, to learn something. And you're foolish if you don't learn something, even if you're not doing something you want to be doing. So thank you very much for letting me learn. I will be a better sergeant on patrol for this experience with you guys individually and collectively as a group. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And you both had hair when you first started. So,
Yeah.
so be careful. Be careful. You coming in.
Watch out. Oh, no.
And because Matt has to catch a flight out of Portland tonight,
Yeah.
so we're going to go ahead and ask any questions we have of Matt on this policy right now. As we've seen the changes that have been made, things that are struck and changed according to requests that we made at the last couple of meetings, and so they are before you. Does anybody have any further questions on this or response? Jim?
I did find a couple things in here that I wanted to recommend, and they're minor. I thought it was very, very well written, and the corrections I thought were great, going more into the, instead of the we or you and all that, going into, but I found a few more of those in there, so I just want to bring those out. And I know they're probably hard to find.
Yeah.
So I just started reading it really closely to kind of help out on that. But on page 2, 1001.3, the very last line has, unfitness for his or her position. I thought maybe.
The very last line in what section?
1001.3.
Second paragraph. First.
Oh, yeah, or to the extent.
I'm sorry, not point 3. Yeah, 1001.3.
Yeah.
The last line.
Second paragraph, last line.
Yeah, the last line where it has, and almost the very end of that, where it says his or her position. I thought maybe instead of his or her, maybe the employee's position. Just kind of getting rid of all the his and hers
Sure.
and yours and And same page, down on, almost to the bottom, 1001.4.2.
Yes, sir.
It has felony statute. That's probably, should be statute. I'm pretty sure there's not a felony
No,
statute
there are
out there.
felony statutes.
Are there?
You're right.
I didn't know that.
Spell check doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
He really did get me.
Felony statute.
Well,
Sure did.
Good catch, good catch.
He's thinking of working these.
Very
And,
good.
and on page 5, 1001.4.15,
Yes, sir.
C,
Yes.
it has failure to notify your supervisor. I thought maybe that should be changed to maybe the employee supervisor, or maybe it should be changed to the employee must notify a supervisor or something like that. It has your in there, so.
It should, yeah, it should be, say, it doesn't have to be your own supervisor. Any officer can go to a supervisor and inform of a problem. It doesn't have to be my specific supervisor.
Because I saw further down it had a
Yeah,
supervisor, so.
that's correct.
It also has in, like your assigned duties, maybe cross off the yours, I think.
Right.
Performance of assigned duties
Right.
would be good. And then the next line down, it has you are taking, so maybe changing that to being taken, on medications being taken. I had one more. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed one. On page 3, on 1001.4.5, under bribes, gratuity, and payment, under B, it has your employment status, your employment exists, so maybe it should be the, the employee's employment exists, or one's employment exists, something like that. That's all I have.
Very good.
Sorry, and like I said, they were all really minor, but I know that's the general intent that you wanted to go with, was
Right.
to take out those personal type pronouns, I guess they are. But I think it's very well written, and the changes I thought were great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Anyone else? Bill?
Professor Lowen, I just want to thank you for the nice job you did on this.
My spectacles.
I just want to mention, I like the couple changes you made in the truthfulness section on page 6. Especially